So now they're setting up a different waterfall at a cheaper price floors, targeting the users who are not sharing the IDFA. So those two groups who are actually taking the first steps figuring this out is actually benefiting from what we consider a crazy phenomenon.
Did you hear the one about the guy who invented a new word? It didn't get the greatest reception. It was probably too hard to spell. It was plagiarism. Hello and welcome to Mobile Heroes Uncensored. My name is John Kutsier. My co-host, of course, is Peggy Ann Saltz. This is episode 11, and today we are chatting about privacy. We're chatting about Netflix and gaming. And of course, we are talking about what is happening in a mobile marketing world that is without IDFA. We have guests from Liftoff, Singular, AdColony, and Fyber. Enjoy the show. So, Peggy, I don't know if you know that I have a teenage girl.
Actually, I do. You have a teenage girl, and I think you have 1 or 2 sons. Could it be?
That is too correct. So
2, okay.
yesterday she brought her new boyfriend home to meet us, and we're pretty open-minded people, but he had spiky hair, he had pierced nose, he had skull tattoos all over, ripped nasty jeans, and you know what, kind of actually a bit of a bad attitude. So my wife talked to our daughter later and told her that the guy just doesn't seem very nice. And of course, she says he's super nice. If he wasn't nice, would he be doing 500 hours of community service? What's going on lately, Peggy?
Well, John, there's a priest, big story, doing something that he shouldn't be, and we all know it. So that's even bigger news.
Well, it's a big deal, right? Because there's a top priest in the US who was outed by a Catholic publication for using the Grindr app and frequently. And of course, he's taken a vow of celibacy, which of course is in question now. The bigger question here, though, is data privacy. I'm guessing that he was using an Android phone and the data was collected by a mobile ad data provider
Mhm.
and they could see his location. Grinder, broadcasts a lot of data and shares a lot of data with vendors as well. If he was using iOS with the IDFA being gone mostly from iOS 14.5 and up, maybe he would have been safer.
So the message here, John, is
I don't
only
know if
mis
I'm going to say
only
use iOS,
only
but
misbehave on Apple.
maybe all I'm going to say is, hey, you know what?
Yeah,
Data privacy is still a thing.
yeah,
And there's still a lot out there. And, most of us are probably not as aware as we should be.
yeah. It gives you thinking because I thought it was all a bit sort of handled and we were talking about it and been a really it had been something that we sorted. So this shows
Mhm.
that it's not sorted. And it
Not
makes you think,
sorted.
John, it makes you think. I don't know about you, but in my career, I think sometimes my browsing history, um,
We don't want to talk about
we
that,
don't wanna
Peggy.
go there, but I mean,
WTMI.
there are articles I have had to write. It's like, "Hey, why don't we write an article about mobile porn, Peggy? Why don't you go out and research that?" It's like, "Yeah, why don't we do that?" And then you can imagine the ads I get. I won't go there, John. There are
Okay,
some
we're gonna have a chat
stories
with your
to share.
husband about this.
There are some stories there. Speaking of stories, big news, interesting news in a way, John. So psychologically split news here. It's like the good news, the bad news.
Yep.
Netflix. What do you make
Yeah.
of it?
Netflix, really interesting. They recently reported revenue, which was pretty good, and they gained subscribers overall, but they lost 500,000 subscribers in the US and Canada, which of course, that's a key demographic,
Mhm.
key geography for them. But they also announced the long rumored entry into gaming. So they're going to be competing with Apple Arcade, with the Google Play Pass. It's not desktop, it's not on your TV, it's mobile focused. That's really interesting. They hired a veteran of
Mhm.
EA and Zynga and Facebook's Oculus division to lead the initiative. And I'm wondering how that's going to work, right? What is that going to look like? Is it going to be kind of an app store on the iOS app? Is it on Google Play as well? Will Apple be okay with that? What will monetization look like for publishers? How will you get paid for providing your game? It looks like it's going to be related to IP that's on the platform. And you know that Netflix has a lot of their own IP for their own series and movies and stuff like that. It's going to be very interesting to see how they do it.
It's gonna be interesting to see how they do it, and it's also a fascinating way to confirm the model, which is this interconnectedness. We talked about it last time. Riot Games looking at music. We've got
Yeah.
Netflix looking at gaming. I'm talking to a dating app company that here in Germany, I'll be writing about it soon on Forbes. And what they're doing is they're going into TV, and TV's going into them. So it's like literally the dating game, right? It's all
Everything
coming
is
together.
everything. Everything is everywhere.
Everything is everything. Everything is everywhere. That's why our show brings it all together. Everything is here.
Peggy, who are we talking to today?
We have, as usual, John, a great lineup. I'll kick it off with Ron Koenigsberg, Chief Growth Officer at Singular. Now, Ron has a long track record in software. I mean long. Laser focused on what matters. And I'll quote from his blog, now more than ever, you need all the data you can get. So it's short, sweet, to the point. And speaking of sweet, here's his weakness, because he admits he doesn't eat white spreads that aren't sweet.
Oh, okay. Peggy, what you don't know about Ron is that he graduated high school in like age 16 or something like that. And he had finished his bachelor's, by the time before he was 20 or something like that. Pretty insane. But Ron, name one super obvious thing about mobile marketing that you did not know for years.
First, I would ask if you talked to my mom with all those compliments beforehand. But something, I come from engineering, as you said, so something that I didn't control till a few years ago is the pure marketing term. So in Singular, we love saying ROI, but for very long, I didn't know that ROAS and ROI are actually the same thing. That's my embarrassing acronym. Sorry.
Horrible, embarrassing, awful. No worries. We all have one.
And I'll continue with Avi Das, Sales Lead Americas at Liftoff. And sales is his space, really and truly, John. If you look at his LinkedIn, he's been there, done that, brands like Unilever, and his colleagues called him out for being extremely collaborative. So when he isn't jamming with colleagues, maybe at Liftoff and elsewhere, he'd like to seriously be jamming in real life in a band, because he is a singer-songwriter in multiple bands. Looking forward to live performing soon. We'd love to hear it. For now, his audience is his rescue dog, Emily, a toy poodle that we might even see in the course of this show. Avi, how about it?
Yeah, I mean, I have to. So her name is Emmy. She wants me to ensure that I corrected it for a global audience, because she loves her fans. But yes, she's definitely around taking a little bit of nap. She's tired of mobile advertising, so that's understandable. But if things heat up and we have a good conversation, she might join.
Yeah, we definitely want to see her. But also, Avi, we want to know what's the one super obvious thing that you did not know about mobile for years and years and years.
Yeah, I'd say as soon as I moved into this industry, I started getting a lot of these LinkedIn emails about deals that people wanted to sell me. I had no idea why they thought that I would be the right person to sell those deals to. It's only much later that I understood how rebrokering of deals works, and that sort of demystified that entire thing for me. I still get a lot of people selling me deals, and if anyone's listening, I have no power over that. So I'm sorry in advance to everyone who have not responded to it over the years.
Okay, so the 95% of people who still don't know what rebrokering is now just hate you, Avi, by the way, because you just said like the one super obvious thing. But anyways, back to you, Peggy.
Absolutely. And continuing with this, Soyeon Park, VP Business Operations at Fyber. And she means business, John. I mean, really, because when it comes to games, this is the deal. She loves playing them, sometimes for hours, also works, of course. And she's a Lego and puzzle enthusiast, completing 1,000 plus piece puzzles, get this, solely looking at shapes instead of colors.
Wow.
Yeah, and if we look hard, I don't know, I can't see it in the background, but we may see some of her prized possessions, including what I'd love to see. Iron Man Lego sets and others, but I don't know if we're going to see it today. Are we going to see it, Son?
It's on the top shelf. I think it's a bit hard to see, but you'll see the Diagon Alley and the Hogwarts castle in the background.
Oh, the castle.
Yeah.
Awesome. You are
Love it.
diehard.
Yeah,
Love it.
Lego puzzles has kept me through the pandemic, and gaming. I mean, I'm kind of obsessed with Zynga's Harry Potter Match 3 game at this point. I think I'm at around puzzle number 400 something. I do spend quite a lot of money, so it's a good inside joke whenever Fyber goes live with a new client. They're like, hey, Soren, check out the RV or interstitial placement. And I'll be like, sorry, I don't get those ads because I paid.
Interesting. The good thing about working in mobile gaming, mobile marketing is that when you're playing a game, somebody says, hey, what are you doing? I'm working.
Market research.
Research, exactly. So we need to know from you, what is one super obvious thing about mobile marketing you didn't know for years?
Well, I would say we're getting more focused also on creative analysis. And the one thing I learned recently is that when it comes to A/B testing different creative formats, it gets really granular to the point of some folks also looking at different fonts. Fonts. Like, I mean, I can get content, maybe the designs, and maybe even color, because different color can mean different things in different culture. But gosh, I didn't know people were also focusing on different fonts.
I so agree with you. I did a research report in Comic Sans once and it got rejected. And I was like, what the heck? It's just a font. I mean, like, so yeah, back to you, Peggy.
Now we know. Now we know what the deal breaker is, indeed. And I'll finish off with Alistair Presney, Director of Product at AdColony.
Hi.
Yeah, and he's a lot like you, Son, because he is a passionate gamer as well, but he's console to the soul, literally, right? One of his biggest accomplishments that he shared was making it to the top 10 of the Diablo 3 leaderboards.
Wow.
Back in 2015, not dating you, Alistair. And fast forward, bringing you here, what has he done during lockdown? He took up World of Warcraft Classic.
Okay.
And that's not all he did, because he also got engaged. So congratulations, Alistair.
Pets don't count. Sorry, pets don't count.
And it's great for him. It's not bad for all of us either, because his fiance is a UA manager.
I get all the secrets.
Workplace romance, best.
There you go. Providing some juicy feedback that probably benefits AdColony UA products and probably marketers on the whole.
Excellent. Excellent. Alistair, I feel like we've done stuff together before. It must have been a webinar or something like that. Your name is ringing a bell, but I have to know, what is one thing about mobile that's super obvious to everyone else that you didn't know for years?
Well, perhaps it's obvious to everyone else now, but before iOS 14, I really didn't know what an IDFA was. And someone came to me and said, hey, I think maids are going to go in. I said, well, who's going to clean your apartment? So that ties into the acronym too, but I didn't know that maid stood for mobile ad ID. So it was, now I think everyone knows.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Your entire company operated on IDFA and GAID for a decade.
It just worked, right? It just worked. So we didn't think about it too much.
Yep, exactly. Do I need to put gas in my car? Do I really? Or shouldn't? No, mine's electric. Okay. Anyways, let's get started. Enough fun and games. Thank you, Peggy, for the introductions. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. That's pretty awesome. Sometimes we have nobody. And then what do? Peggy and I just chat about our cats or something. It's really boring. Today, we are talking about iOS 14.5. And guess what? IDFA, Alistair. Just for you. And we're talking about that again. We're not making any apologies about that, because honestly, this is kind of the biggest thing that's happened in mobile for really a decade. It's shifting which ad networks are winning. It's shifting who's going to win in mobile. By the way, Liftoff's doing pretty well, I understand. It's also changing where growth marketers spend, which platform they're spending on. It's literally upending the economics of mobile growth. And you know what? As an industry, we really haven't figured it out yet, in my humble opinion. So Ron, we're going to start with you. What are the changes you're seeing in the market? What are the impacts?
Yeah, we've written quite a bit about it, and John, I think you know it pretty pretty intimately. And we've done some major data research around it, and we are constantly doing that. Like every 2 weeks, we take another snapshot and we look at the data and we see what are interesting insights. And there are a few things that we can share. First and foremost is that we are post the change, and that also took a while, right? So right now, I can say iOS 14.5 and beyond. We used to say iOS 14, then iOS 14.5, now iOS 15. So iOS 14.5 and beyond is here. ATT is adopted. IDFA without consent is mostly a part of the past. So that's the first thing. Second, platform spend distribution is changing, and it's something that we have seen and we have talked about. Android keeps growing on the expense of iOS budget allocation. So the way that people allocate their budgets between iOS and Android is changing. We used to have anywhere between 55-45 or 60-40 split, and now it's more towards 70-30, and continuing in this trend, at least for now. And I think channel mix, in addition to that, is also changing, right? And we are asking a bit here about who are the winners, and we said that Liftoff are doing pretty well. So I think that's something that we see, right? More budget is allocated towards, I would say, what we used to call mid-tier networks, or not the Facebook and Googles, but and also not the really small ones, but to platforms that they have a specific expertise, like the ones that are here on this talk. And lastly, something that I think is more interesting for me as an engineer and as a product person, I would say, is that we see more and more web flows. So companies that are able to do so, obviously, if you're a hyper-casual game, it's not an option. But if you are a fintech startup, then running your acquisition flow via web and then going to the app is something that we see more and more, and that's an interesting trend for me.
Very, very cool. Avi, does that align with what you're seeing? Are you seeing anything different?
I'd say for the most part, it is aligned. I don't know that the shift is as drastic as from 55-45 to 70-30. But there is volatility in that spend distribution between platforms. I think from my perspective, and I know that the perspective that Ron just shared was from his perspective on product and engineering. From the perspective of let's say talking to clients or where they are, I think we're just getting to the thick of things. Because while ATT formally, or 14.5 formally launched in end April, and 14 and the further updates have happened, 14.6 happened in May, it's only now that we've gotten to about that 80% plus adoption, thanks to 14.6 primarily. And it's only now that the ecosystem has started to shift so meaningfully that everybody is now having to face their demons and having to answer those tough questions on the advertiser side. So I think we're in this place where I personally think that we will know how things actually play out over the next 3 to 6 months as demand partners ramp up their scan-friendly products and optimization models, as clients understand what performance will look like and how they should measure it, with help from everybody on this call. And I think it's in that 3 to 6 month period that we'll really know whether iOS spend will actually decline, or if this is just a blip as people figure out and face their worst fears, as I like to call it.
Super interesting. So, Un, what are you seeing?
I will have to, concur with what Avi and Ron has just mentioned, specifically with the fact that, one, when we also looked at June data, we would always expect the month-over-month spend to grow across both OSs. However, at least from Fyber side, we were seeing an increase on Android, but not so much on the iOS, even a slight decrease. So that indicated with the 14.6 rolling out the first week of June, where a lot of the marketers are at least pulling back or at least holding on to their iOS UA budgets at this point, while everybody's figuring out how do we target and how do we reach ROAS on the IDFA less traffic. And kind of going back to what Avi was mentioning, I do think it's just the beginning, and we have to figure out how to optimize and target those IDFA less traffic on iOS. because when we look at the CPMs on 14.6 across different ad formats, rewarded video, interstitials, and banner, we're still seeing that the CPM on the 14.6 traffic, especially the users who have consented not to share their device IDs, are actually a lot lower than what we used to see previously on 14.4. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was interesting to also think about then at this point, who is actually benefiting from this, phenomenon. And at least what we're seeing at Fyber are two different groups. So we are noticing that there are advertisers who are, taking that first step, being courageous, and figuring out that even the IDFA-less traffic might be worth less. There's a lot less competition. And so there are advertisers who are, taking that first step to access those impressions at a lower price. And on the flip side, we're seeing the publishers taking similar steps. So now they're setting up a different waterfall at a cheaper price floors, targeting the users who are not sharing the IDFA. So those two groups who are actually taking the first steps, figuring this out, is actually benefiting from this, what we consider a crazy phenomenon.
Love that. Love that. Alistair, what are you seeing there? Who are those changes benefiting? Maybe who are they hurting as well?
Sure. Well, first, I'm going to concur with Ron and Avi on the spend kind of changes we've seen. We're seeing more spend on Android. We're seeing higher CPMs on Android. We're seeing less spend on iOS. We're seeing lower CPMs on iOS. One of the interesting things that I've observed is, two things, actually. The first thing is the idea of benchmarking your campaign, having like a CPI that you're trying to reach. It's kind of been reset. So what we're starting to see from advertisers now when they're measuring success is they're really like establishing a new baseline for what they would consider a successful campaign or an unsuccessful campaign. And the second thing we're observing, and maybe this is a little more unique to AdColony and others because we have a brand organization, is we have a customer base that's mobile only with our app, developers and UA customers. We also have a brand side of the business. So we have this kind of spectrum of companies that we work with who are maybe more engaged in mobile or less engaged with mobile. And what we find is that our UA customers are really starting to get engaged. They're really starting to understand what kind of data they can leverage based on the SKAdNetwork network post specs, and they're navigating through that in kind of a trial and error way. But on the brand side, I think the uptake's been a little bit slower, to be honest. Most of these companies, they aren't mobile only or mobile first. They'll be delivering their campaigns across web and mobile, and so navigating those changes with our brand customers has been a little more challenging than with our performance advertisers on mobile.
That's really interesting, actually, because the brand customers, you would think, are also somewhat isolated, however, from, not having to worry as much about identifying, users who are high value specifically, because it's customers that they're looking for, not a particular game user. And there's long established ways of doing brand advertising, correct, where you can be a little broader and still get in plenty of good customer base, correct?
That's right. So on the performance side, you're mainly looking for that app install. And the big challenge with IDFA, with app install campaigns, is you need consent on both the publisher app and the advertiser app. And the numbers that we see are lower than what we were expecting as well. But you have to multiply that percentage by itself to kind of get your true attribution rate. And on the performance side, what that's leading to is more and more advertisers really testing out SKAdNetwork to see what they can do there and what they can't do there. On the brand side, I think the impact more comes from, what kind of audience I'm trying to target and how that audience gets segmented. So for that, you don't need consent on both sides. You just need consent on the publisher app to know if that user belongs to an audience segment or does not belong to an audience segment.
Interesting. Avi, your thoughts on winners and losers here?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I think. I think, here's what I'm going to say. I think what's interesting to me is, especially after WWDC, the idea that starting, I think with iOS 15, the fact that advertisers will start receiving post specs directly from devices as opposed to through ad networks, I think is going to level the playing field. So I think that's the big takeaway, is that this is going to be a level playing field from the perspective of a demand side platform like Liftoff. Now, what does that end up create? What world does that end up creating? Will some people lose, some people win? I have personal hopes that with a level playing field, demand-side platforms are able to start winning more. But I think at the end of the day, we have to, this will sound cliched, but we win if our clients will win. So it's more important that clients figure out what performance looks like in this new world, and then who's able to service that best. This is such a politically correct answer. I'm sorry, John.
You get minus 10 points for that, but you get plus 10 points for being the coolest dude on the show. So it's all good. Don't worry about that. But actually what you're saying is really interesting, because I have seen speculation and personally speculated that, when advertisers are seeing those postbacks, getting them directly, how's that going to impact sends? That's going to be very, very interesting, because networks like yourself and others have often felt like view through attribution and claimed attributions by sends have negatively impacted them, right? So we'll let you get away with that. We'll slide off you. We're going to move to Ron. Ron, who are these changes benefiting? Who are they hurting?
Yeah, I think like any change, the ones who are benefiting are the ones who prepared well in advance. So I think something that had happened is that many companies put huge R&D resources and huge investments on developing new stuff, and obviously short term it's an investment, and now some people are starting to get a payoff. As an example, MMPs needed to develop a whole new product line, right? It's like a huge new product. Networks as well, by the way, in terms of any optimization engine and things like that. So the ones who benefited are the ones who took the right bets and were willing to be bullish, right? So we were pretty bullish on Scan. I have to say we benefited, right? One, it increased our collaboration with the ecosystem, with our customers as a trusted advisor. It also increased the confidence of prospects of doing business with us. So we reacted fast, we benefited. Ones that didn't, didn't get the same outcome. Advertisers, I see the same. We talked about brand a second ago. So brand advertisers, I think that they had the choice, right? They didn't have they didn't have the same pressure to reinvent themselves. So now they're a bit slow. But those who had to adapt themselves, and for advertisers, I think obviously gaming is what I see from our customers. So they are now ahead. Will it become an advantage or not? So as we all said, we still need some time, and obviously some would win. I think the ones for the advertiser side, I would say from what I see, the ones with really organized processes and the data stacks, those are the ones who at least for now look in a better position to win, because they are already working, they're already trying, and that's the basis for achieving results. So that's my take.
Love it. So Un, I want to turn to you and I want to talk about monetization. How is monetization getting impacted right now?
Well, so like I mentioned previously, we are seeing some publishers who are setting up different waterfalls. So basically optimizing a lower price floors for targeting users who opted in to not share their IDFAs anymore, just to make sure that there's an alignment between the CPM and the demands who are willing to buy these IDFA-less users at a lower price. So that's definitely happening. And overall on the CPM basis, yeah, we are definitely seeing a double-digit decline on what we used to see across different ad formats. So all across rewarded video, interstitials, and banners. So CPM for the monetization side is definitely hurting.
Is that iOS only, or is that iOS and Android that you're seeing?
I would say it's basically most prominent in iOS. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Alistair, what are you seeing there in terms of monetization?
I can only echo what Soyun said. We're seeing a very similar thing where on iOS we're seeing a drop in revenue and CPMs, and on Android it's been a lot more consistent. And based on the fact that advertisers are spending more on Android, it's being more competitive. We are seeing a little bit of growth on Android, more than we expect to see, which is great. Now, AdColony, again, because we have the brand advertisers, we do see less of an impact overall that I think others might be seeing, just because they're doing CPM-based buys. The brand advertisers who focus more on targeting content as opposed to targeting users are doing just fine, and that's translating well over to what we see on the monetization side.
Okay, guess what? too much work and not enough play makes us all very, very dull people. So we are going to do a little bit of a game. And Peggy, you better get an acronym because I'm going to go to you too. You know,
Oh,
so,
come on, John.
yeah,
That's not right.
this is pre-warning right here. Just because the world's going crazy and the mobile marketing industry is insane right now doesn't mean we shouldn't have a good time. We should always try and have a little fun, right, Peggy? At our guest's expense, and sometimes me at yours,
Absolutely.
you at mine. No, we're going there. We haven't played the macronym game in a while. That's mobile acronym. You share a mobile acronym that you think the other guests won't know, and then we see if you're right. So you are up first. What is your mobile acronym to share with the group?
Oh, I thought about 2 when I saw that question.
We might even let you do 2 if the first one's really good.
But okay, so my first one was API because we use that word a lot.
Okay.
But I realized that there's a lot of product engineering folk on this panel.
Yep.
So it's going to be an easy one.
It's an easy one. Go to the second one.
The second one is just because I'm an avid game player. Another one I chose was MMORPG.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one that everybody kind of knows.
Yeah.
But you know what all of the letters stand for? Let's throw it to, Peggy. I'm throwing you to the wolves here. Sorry, Peggy. Can you answer what is that? What is that acronyms? What does that mean?
Part of it you always know, right? Because
Yes.
I also
Massively multiplayer.
Yeah, there's the multiplayer game thing in there. I mean, I contribute to
role-playing
Pocket Gamer. I
game.
should know this stuff. So
So put us out of our
sorry,
misery. Help
sorry
us out.
to Dave from our last show, one of our last shows from Pocket Gamer. No, it's got to do with massively something multiplayer game. Oh,
Blah blah blah. Something,
blah, blah.
something.
Got me.
So put
Got
us out
me,
of our
son.
misery. What is it?
Massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
That was it. The role play. Yes.
Now,
That's what makes it fun.
I could almost bet, Peggy, that I saw her looking down when she. I think she
wanted to
read
make
that
sure.
off.
I thought it was a cue card somewhere.
Sloan, did you read that off, or was it in your mind?
I had to make sure that I remember it.
Oh, wow. You lose the Bitcoin for best guest because you gave us one that you didn't know off by heart yourself. Ron, we're turning to you. We may have lost Alistair, but we're sticking him around for now. We'll see if he returns. Ron, we're turning to you. What is the mobile acronym that you are going to share with us that none of us know?
First, I'm happy that I knew the RPG part from the previous question. So I feel a bit proud. One that I thought would be interesting, especially in the spirit of this talk, is OAID.
Say it again slowly.
OAID.
OAID. Whoa. Avi, Peggy, Soun, Alistair. Anybody know that one?
Is it operating?
Operating something ID at the end.
Identifier. I'm drawing a blank. Everybody else is drawing a blank. Ron, put us out of our misery.
John, I have to say I counted on you for this one.
Come on, I failed you. I'm sorry.
But it's Open Advertising ID. And I thought it's interesting because that's the advertising ID that you use in China mostly. It was invented by Huawei, as we say it, at least on our side of the world, a while ago. And we have been investing a lot in China in the last year and a half for sure. So that's the IDFA of China, I would say.
I thought that was CAID. CAID.
No.
I'm going to Google that later. And if I'm right, I'm going to plaster it all over the screen in post-production. Loadingly. But anyway,
Bitcoin and take back.
Yeah, exactly. Avi, we're turning to you. Can you follow in Ron's footsteps and stagger us all with your knowledge of some acronym in mobile marketing that we do not know?
Difficult to follow in Ron's footsteps. Let me say that at the outset. But so given I'm here representing, I guess, the client view, I was going to go with BEP.
BEP.
Break-even period?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can use either point or period, but I think break-even period is perfectly fine. Well,
what is it officially, Avi?
Well, I've heard people use it both as break-even point or break-even period, but the idea is how much time after you start spending in a cohorted manner will it take for you to recover all your costs.
So Un, you're back in the running for the Bitcoin.
Nice.
That was amazing.
I didn't know I was getting Bitcoin. This is amazing.
We don't tell anybody, otherwise we
Use
have
it
like
in our
500
games.
people who want to show up, right? You know, and Alistair's, he's out of the running. He's gone. He's left us. Maybe
I'll
his
take his
internet crashed
portion.
out. Exactly. Oh, he's coming back. He's got a device
Yes.
not connected. Once he's in, we'll let him back in. Who, you know what? It's Peg. Oh, Alistair, you're back.
I made it.
Oh,
Hey, welcome
yay.
back.
Welcome back. He went off the Google one, John. That's what he did, right?
Okay.
I
okay.
ran down to get a charger because my computer ran out of battery.
I
This
was
is
betting you
planning
went
ahead.
off to get a
This is
better
planning ahead.
acronym.
I think that Alistair, you came back at the right time because it is your turn. We are playing the mAcronym game, which is mobile acronym, and you have to think up a mobile acronym that nobody else knows. And so Un, she did fairly well. Ron stumped us all. Avi stumped most of us, but not Un. What is your mobile acronym?
AdArcDAO was the one I came up with, but I think everyone's going to figure that one out.
Yeah, everyone's gonna figure that one. We
I
all
know
know
the
that one.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
It's all good. No Bitcoin for you. Peggy, moving on to you. What is your mobile acronym that we do not know?
Well, these guys are going to know them, right? But I was just thinking because I write and keep on writing them. You know what LTV is. You get that one. And I was talking to someone saying, we need a uniform data metric. We need something that takes us past the CAC. And I'm like,
one ring to rule them all.
One ring to rule them all, and it has to get us past CAC. And I was like, I know CAC, but what does it mean?
I think everybody who knows that one, you know that one. Everybody else there.
I know what it means.
The customer acquisition cost. Yep. It sounds like
I couldn't
word,
get past the idea that we have to get past that. That was the thing that was getting on me.
Okay.
But you do have it. You do have it.
Well, we all got that. So no Bitcoin for you, Peggy. And it is time for us to get back to work. Fun and games are fun and they are games, but they are not going to make us smarter. So Peggy, please stump our guest with, let's try another hard question.
Hard questions. Okay. I will kick it off with Alistair because he came back, right?
All right.
If iOS just becomes perennially harder to do growth marketing on, gets harder and harder. We heard about it. You have to meet your demons, face your demons. How do you think marketers will pick other channels other than in-app?
It's a really interesting question, and I was going to bring it up. I read an article last week about how content and content distribution is starting to change already as a result of iOS 14. So we're seeing in the game development sphere, we're starting to see features and games that target a much broader audience. You don't have to target specific users. I mean, we already know about the explosion of hyper casual, but what we're starting to see now is a bit more hyper casual type elements within games that are more for a niche audience, which I thought was very interesting. And then my big prediction is I think that companies are going to stop being mobile only or mobile first. They're going to distribute to more platforms in general. So through Steam, through Epic Games, through the app stores, through Nintendo Switch. And they're really going to go much more broad with how they kind of, define their distribution channels and their audience.
Yeah, I would say that. I've been hearing loads about connected TV. I mean, more than I thought was possible thinking about that platform there. Ron, how about you? Where are they going to go?
So first, as an iPhone user, I think they will not go because in the end, people love using iOS. And if I'm thinking about companies like, the ones that you use in any case, like games, if you're a fan, econ, finance, you will use the app on the phone, and getting to you would still be valuable from a market standpoint. So my bet is that people would find ways to be efficient on iOS and to overcome. It will be a challenge. I do agree with the multi-platform, especially on web. And I just think that the reason that it would happen is because it will be easier to justify compared to before. Before, the app economy was just very efficient. as it becomes more less efficient, more channels become a valid option. So that's the way that I look at it.
So Yun, what about you?
Well, I would love to add the fact that, yeah, I don't think it will definitely go away per se, because iOS users have been and are still more lucrative than Android. And we're still seeing about 60% of the IAP occurring on iOS. So marketers have to figure out how to target those users on iOS with IDFA going away. However, in terms of other platforms, I'm also hearing boost in influencer marketing. So that was brought up as a topic in another panel I joined. So that's interesting to see. And another point that I found interesting was Google's announcements in GDC last week, I believe, about how they're allowing ROAS campaigns to be not only against an IAP, but also ad revenue. And I thought that step was really brilliant in a way, specifically for hyper-casual publishers who will be having a lot more difficulty targeting and acquiring users on iOS without IDFA, who depends so much on the ad revenue. So now allowing the ROAS campaigns against the ad revenue to be available on Google, I mean, I would say they're also one of the winner of this phenomenon.
100%, 100%. Very interesting. Avi, let's turn to you for the next one. Kind of a $1 million question. Is this disruption temporary, or will things return to some new normal on iOS?
I think yes to this being, yeah, I don't think this could classify as something that's temporary. I think this is going to change things as they stand, right? So it is not temporary, but I think we will find a new normal, right? And that new normal will essentially have to be a world where advertisers will have to figure out what's the best way for them to reach their users and customers. And everybody's talked about that a little bit, right? Contextual targeting, user segment-based targeting. So we're essentially in effect taking a few steps from where we were till last year to where I come from in my past life, which is CPG marketing, where you're trying to think about who your users are and how you reach them differently. What will also change is, of course, because developer incentives will be affected, right? We talked about this a little bit before, but you think about mid-core, hardcore gaming companies, right? And a lot of these companies rely on whale-based users to drive their revenue. Now, without the ability to really have granular information about users, that will change. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it's going to change. What does that mean for their incentives? Will we stop seeing less free-to-play games and more games that you will have to pay to play, especially in the RPGs and hardcore midcore space? So I think that's going to change, and that's going to be interesting to look at. The last thing I will say, and I'm piggyback off of everybody's connected devices and devices in general, multi-devices, is the growth in mobile advertising has also been driven by bigger phone screens. And I think the next step is playing on TVs. And I know Netflix announced a play in gaming, I think either early this week or late last week. And I think that's going to be interesting as well. As the mobile space becomes a little more complicated or different, what role do connected devices and multiple other devices play? And how do people in our space also adapt to that new world? I think is going to be interesting.
Really interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking back to what Ron was saying, less efficient, but still working. And so other things become part of the mix, the marketing mix. So Un, what are you thinking there in terms of this disruption? Will things return to some new normal at some point?
I mean, kind of echoing what Avi and Ron said, I think we'll find a new normal, but that doesn't mean that the spend on iOS will go away completely. We will have to find a new normal. I do expect the spend on iOS to return, hopefully within the Q3 towards the end. But new normal as in, one, we're already hearing from certain developers that they're going to be focusing on Android game first, pushing out builds on Android first. And that's never been the case in the past, where we're very familiar with the fact that Android versions always lagging a bit behind in terms of feature development or SDK upgrades. That dependency is going to change, I think so. And some of the game developers are also thinking, hey, I'm going to be putting most of my UA focus now on Android. So that's a paradigm that will shift. I don't think it will be temporary. But but I don't think the iOS will go away completely.
Very, very interesting. Alistair, your thoughts?
Interesting comment on Android feature set. I kind of disagree, but I also agree. So one of the things I found really interesting with the Apple changes is with the upcoming Apple release, they're changing how you can A/B test a storefront on iOS, which is a wonderful feature to have if you're a game developer. So I expect to see a lot more focus on the app storefront. And what's interesting there in terms of feature sets, Android's had this for years. And a lot of marketers have used the Android A/B testing features on the storefront to optimize there. And I do agree with the sentiment that I think mobile developers are going to focus on Android apps before iOS apps. There's already a larger audience there. It's easier to access that audience. There's a strong feature set there. But the bottom line is the users aren't going away on iOS. It's just a different way of targeting those users. So the value's still there. It's still accessible. It's just a different mechanism to access that value.
Yeah, it just needs to be unlocked in a different way. Absolutely.
So we accept that this is the new normal. This is the way it is, right? Now, if we're getting back to this new normal, what are the ways that we should be looking at it to get to that goal? I mean, there was a lot of interest and a lot of unlocked value in incrementality, for example. Or is it something else? I ask you, Ron, what is the way that we're going to unlock that value that even Alistair was talking about?
Interesting. So I think there are a lot of buzzwords right now. And something that is really important for me is to talk about the fact that all those things like MMM, like incrementality, they rely on the basics first. So they run on top of data that you have. So if the basis on UA used to be granularity, that's gone, right? And incrementality is not going to bring granularity back, as an example. So I think some order is in place for that. So first, the basics is getting the standardized data set right. That's what I said before, right? That people that are ahead are the ones with strong data and processes. So I think that's what I was in a way hinting for. So you need, how do you run a query of how many paid users do you have versus organic, right? How do you calculate ROI on a daily level, on a channel level? How do you look at it? How do you test creatives? So those basic questions with basic data sets are what will be answered first. Some companies already have something in place to answer. Some of our customers already have something, an initial step, I would say. And that's the basis for a new normal. Then incrementality, MMM, all of those are tools on top, and they have a different meaning. They will be more useful because you would need to. We talked about proving value, so you would need to prove value, and it's a cool way to prove the value of a new channel, as an example. But mostly new tools would get room, same as ASO is getting more room. So more people would find incrementality and MMM useful to invest in, but it's not the replacement.
So very much focusing on the basics, getting your data house in order, being able to move from there. How do you see that, Alistair? How would you say, is it exactly that, or what are your views?
I think, yeah, my views are very close to that. And I want to bring in the influencer marketing again. That was a good point that was raised here. It's very difficult to do and measure influencer marketing, and incrementality is already kind of a good way of doing that. And I think, it's a good combination where you're able to do both influencer marketing with a good incrementality data set and approach. And I do expect to see a lot more of that going forward, where we try and unlock values or valuable users, through kind of social confirmation of who's playing a game and who enjoys it, and what the honest, candid feedback of that influencer playing that game or that app is.
I want to ask you, Avi, actually, because you're seeing so many different. When I think about what Liftoff looks at and the different opportunities and the creatives and the mixes of those as well, what are you seeing around the ways that people are trying to be more innovative here?
Yeah, I'd say for one, I think there is definitely a segment of customers who, just by taking the scan bull by its horns, are being innovative in itself, like trying to figure this out as they build it. And I want to definitely applaud them for doing that, because I can understand that's difficult. Specifically, though, we have customers who are obviously creative testing is not as easy as it used to be on iOS, and therefore there are customers who are using creative testing on Android to influence their creative decisions on iOS, which I think is a bold but very data-backed move, because historically we've seen that there aren't enough differences between the platforms to not merit this be our new normal, at least until creative testing becomes more widely available on iOS. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, Betty.
Excellent, excellent. I want to dive a little deeper into kind of platform politics. And Soon, I think we'll kick it off with you, because you already talked about that a little bit in terms of, what's changing. We've seen games develop on iOS first and then get to Android. We've seen apps like that. I mean, Clubhouse, right? That was a big one, right? It was not available on Android for forever, and actually it cost them as well. But how do you see the platform politics working out between iOS and Android if the current trends continue?
Well, I mean, I can only hypothesize, but I'm really curious to see the hyper casual segments developments and whether they will actually lead more charge on the Android. Just because the UAs is going to be a lot easier for them, given that they can still target the device. But again, with the recent development from Google, where it allows the advertisers to target the ROAS against not only IAP revenue, but also the in-app advertising revenue, which is a huge segment for the hyper casual publishers. So I would love to see if there's going to be a dynamic change in that. Also taking one step further beyond just the platform specific, another trend I'm really curious to see how it plays out is a lot of the enterprise gaming companies who are now in a positions to build their walled garden. This is like a really passionate topic of mine. So you saw, EA who acquired Glue, who's also an amalgamation of 5 to 6 different studios. Zynga also has like a portfolio of different studios. So all these gaming companies who now has a user data that could be kept within their walled gardens, they could bypass the IDFA-less scenario and use those user ID and user data and contextual informations within their garden to continue to have a positive ROAS user acquisition. So I'm really curious to see how that trend will also pan out. So that's my take. Yeah.
I have never heard the term enterprise gaming before, and I kind of love it. I kind of like that term a lot. You're talking about those platforms, and they're buying up measurement, they're buying up influencer marketing, they're buying up other ways, tools that mobile developers and publishers and marketers need. Alistair, what are you seeing there in terms of maybe the platform politics, or maybe what the platform politics are causing in terms of these enterprise gaming companies that Soun is talking about?
So I really think that taking this enterprise gaming idea and taking it one step further and using Epic Games as an example, I think what we will start seeing is more app stores appearing with different policies on how users are tracked. We're beholden to Google Play and Apple App Store policy as third-party developers on their program. And on iOS, sideloading isn't really allowed, and Apple itself is a walled garden. But on Android, there's this whole kind of sea of opportunity for these large, diversified gaming companies to find a new way to distribute their apps through new stores and track across several apps using the stores and purchasing platforms tied to those stores as a way to kind of track users and monetize those users. So I do see some of that as a viable option in the future. Especially on Google Play, or not Google Play, sorry, on Android specifically. On iOS, it's hard to say really. It really comes down to what regulators are going to allow or not allow in terms of what platforms do and do allow or do not allow. And what I find really interesting and where I spend most of my time now is on this really interesting overlap between IDFA, user privacy, and this walled garden kind of antitrust sphere that are seeming to get more and more overlapped as time goes on. And there's going to be a lot of scrutiny in what Apple does as well. So it's really hard to say what's going to come out of that, but we could also see potentially sideloading on iOS, which is a very kind of exciting proposition. Time will tell. I'm not a prophet, but time will tell.
I think that's an amazing thing to bring up right now because we're not seeing this threat legally, regulatory wise to iOS in just one country. It's not just happening in the States. We're seeing it in Europe. We're seeing it in other countries as well. And it would be hard to imagine a reality 3 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, where at least one of those countries or jurisdictions, maybe Europe, hasn't said, Apple, open the doors, open the doors, right? And that would be massive. It would change our world, maybe more than IDFA. Ron, last crack at that one, maybe. What are you seeing there in terms of platform politics and the geopolitics of mobile right now with the new walled gardens and the old walled gardens and everybody else?
Yeah, so I think first it's hyper connected, right? All those things. So we're talking about will Google follow? But first, Android is also going to be impacted by this change. First, we talked about products. So if apps are going to monetize differently on iOS, probably it's going to impact how they're also monetizing on Android, right? So that's one. Two, if channel mix is going to change. So if people will prove that influencers is a good way to advertise and it's profitable on iOS, so they will likely do it as well on Android. So Android is also not going to be the same a year from now. The biggest question that for us as an MMP is, will Android follow? Meaning, will measurement on Android and on Google products will be similar to iOS? And there, obviously, we're not profits as well, but our approach is that we feel that Google is coming with solutions first, and we see them already experimenting with things like Flock. They build mechanisms like referrals. So we feel that even though it's likely that they would improve and try to, in a way, sell the same privacy experience to their users, we do think it will come with solutions for the industry. So we don't think it's going to be as violent as this transition.
Excellent.
Interesting word choice.
Yeah.
It has been violent. There's been massive changes in what people are doing. There's billions of dollars of spend that have been impacted here and are continuing to be impacted. I want to thank every one of you, Alistair, Avi, Soun, Ron, for taking time. Some of you from your evenings from in Europe or the Middle East or elsewhere. Thank you so much for taking some time. It's been fun. I hope you've enjoyed it. And Peggy and I have enjoyed it, I believe. Have you not, Peggy?
Absolutely. Makes my evening.
Excellent. Yeah, you're one of the ones joining from Europe,
Yes,
but you're a night owl, you're a vampire, so
Yes.
that's normal. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, now we have something new, something that Peggy has dreamed up. It is the Mobile Heroes Minute, and we are going to be spending a minute on a mobile hero. It makes sense to me, Peggy. Who are we talking about?
Well, that's it, because there's one every 2 weeks, and we come out every 2 weeks, John. So it just sort of fits together. And they get such an awesome looking page. Don't you wish you had a page like this?
I do. Where's my page?
Where's your page like this? My About Us sucks compared to this. I'm sorry, John. We won't even go there. We're so text. No, this is great photography. And this is Ziwei Neo. He is the regional performance marketing manager at Tinder, which is, of course, the world's most popular app for meeting new people. He's worked and lived in Tokyo, Seoul, Singapore. I said he's a mobile hero, but he's also a mobile champion when it comes to understanding marketing dynamics, particular to APAC.
Wow.
He understands the cultural norms. It's helped him scale and grow global apps in regional markets. And in that spirit, and every mobile hero does this, they write a blog based on their firsthand experience. And this time we get a crash course in how to scale your campaigns in global markets.
Everybody wants to know that. I mean, like, I
Yeah.
want all the details. I want the secrets there.
And that's the great thing. He's written it in a really organized way. I went through, it's just bullet points, just, follow it to the letter. And the key takeaway, I love it. It's very simple, very, very profound. Location, 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 John. If you want to scale, pay attention to those regional markets, pay attention to creatives, be aware of where you are marketing. And so it's all about, amongst other things in his blog, about that.
You know what's really interesting about that? I mean, obviously, that really matters in Asia. You've got many different cultures jammed together in tight spaces, right? And you mentioned some of the places where he's lived and done that. That makes a ton of sense in Europe, where you've got a lot of smaller countries that are jammed together. It's interesting to think about how that operates in a place like the United States, where honestly, you've got very different cultures in the Pacific Northwest, in the South, maybe Miami and Florida, you know, the Northeast corner. Be very interesting to see how that all works and how that plays out in places like that.
And of course, I won't say, but I have to, John, when you bring it up, we've also got Americans.
Who are those?
Who are those people? And who knows what games they play, but I will not go there. And the dating apps, we will not go there. But it's full of really actionable advice. And we're going to look at them every 2 weeks from now on, John.
Rock and roll. I'm looking forward to it. Sounds cool. Thank you so much, Peggy. So that is a bit of a wrap for today. It has been amazing. It has been very, very cool. But I want to cast our eyes a little bit forward and look at next week. What are we doing next time, Peggy? Who are we talking to, and what is the topic?
The saga continues, John. Episode 12. Episode 12 is all about dating apps.
Wow.
And we literally have a dynamic duo from Bumble. So I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be talking about data. We talk about creatives. We'll be talking about strategy, all about dating apps. If you're a marketer in that space, you know where you need to be.
Wonderful. I am so looking forward to that. We're going to find you a date. I mean, maybe it's your husband, but we'll see how that goes. Looking forward to that. For everybody else, be back, come back. We're going to be doing something awesome again next episode. Thank you for tuning in.